My ex left us for a rich man. How should I react? When Danielle and I first exchanged vows, the future felt like a vast, uncharted territory we were destined to explore together, a solid foundation beneath our feet. We were college sweethearts, the kind of couple that friends pointed to as proof that young love could last. We bonded over late-night study sessions, shared dreams of a quiet life, and a mutual desire for a family. I truly believed we were building an unbreakable fortress, a life where our two children, Carter and Charlotte, would grow up sheltered by the certainty of their parents' love. For a time, it was exactly that. Our home was filled with the chaotic symphony of a young family. The patter of small feet, the arguments over whose turn it was to choose the movie, the easy laughter that filled the spaces in between. I saw our future laid out like a roadmap. Each milestone a destination we would reach hand in hand. But the ground beneath our fortress began to tremble so subtly at first that I dismissed it as the normal settling of a long-term relationship. It started with the small things, tiny cracks in the facade of our perfect life. She started having more late nights at the office and work dinners with colleagues I'd never heard of. Her phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, became an extension of her hand, always angled away from me. Its screen quickly darkened whenever I entered a room. Whispered phone calls were taken on the back porch, her voice a low murmur that would cease the moment she realized I was nearby. A chasm of emotional distance opened between us, a cold, empty space I couldn't seem to cross, no matter how hard I tried. I told myself it was stress from her demanding job. I told myself it was the monotony of marriage, the inevitable dulling of a once bright flame. I was a fool, making excuses for a fire that was already being stoked elsewhere. The truth, when it came, wasn't a slow burn. It was an explosion that leveled everything I thought I knew. She hadn't been catching up with colleagues. She had been carrying on a clandestine affair with a flashy, charismatic businessman, a man whose tailored suits and confident swagger were a world away from my comfortable, predictable life. He was, in her words, someone who could offer her the future she deserved, someone who understood her ambition in a way I, apparently, never could. The day she confessed was the day our world ended. She sat me down in our living room, the same room where we'd brought our babies home from the hospital, and she calmly dismantled our life. She tried to frame it as a positive step, a courageous act of self-love, her chance at a clean slate and true happiness. But her words were hollow, a self-serving justification for an act of profound betrayal. All I saw was the wreckage she was leaving in her wake. All I could think about were the two innocent lives that were about to be caught in the crossfire. Carter, at 14, was old enough to understand the venom in our raised voices from behind our closed bedroom door. The moment he pieced together the words affair and leaving, he stormed out of the house, the slam of the front door echoing the shattering of our family. Charlotte, my sweet, sensitive 11-year-old, just clung to me, her small body racked with sobs, her words a dagger to my already broken heart. "Why doesn't mommy love us anymore?" she cried. What answer could I possibly give a child to a question so fundamentally wrong? How do you explain to your daughter that her mother's love had been traded for a shinier, more expensive model? After the divorce, she didn't just move out, she evaporated from our lives. I held on to a sliver of hope that some maternal instinct would kick in, that she would fight for them, that she would at least try to mitigate the damage she had caused. But she didn't. She packed her designer suitcases and catapulted herself directly into her new, upgraded life with a man Carter had bitterly nicknamed Mr. Moneybags. It was the callousness of her departure that was so breathtaking. She spoke of a fresh start, a life unencumbered by the baggage of a mediocre existence. Her words, delivered with a chilling detachment, branded us, her children, her husband of 15 years, as obstacles to her happiness. She had the audacity to tell me to stop being so bitter, that the kids would get over it and understand one day. Bitter wasn't the word. I was gutted. I was a single father left to pick up the pieces of two shattered little hearts. The children, however, needed no encouragement from me to form their own opinions. Their pain quickly hardened into a protective wall of anger. They refused her calls, letting them go to voicemail until her number was a familiar ghost in their missed call logs. They ignored her texts, which started as half-hearted apologies and quickly morphed into defensive justifications. Eventually, they blocked her on all social media, a definitive digital severing. Carter, always the more articulate of the two, put it bluntly one evening. Any mother who can just walk out on her kids for some rich guy isn't a mother at all, he said, his voice laced with a cynical edge that didn't belong to a 14-year-old. Charlotte's reaction was quieter, but no less profound. She retreated into herself, her vibrant, chatty personality dimming into a watchful silence. Her trust in the world, and especially in the people who were supposed to love her unconditionally, had been broken, and I had no idea how to begin to repair it. Months bled into a year. We found a new rhythm, a new normal for our fractured family of three. It wasn't easy. I was a ghost of my former self, juggling the demands of my job with the emotional needs of two grieving children, all while processing my own heartbreak. There were burnt dinners, forgotten PDA meetings, and nights I'd fall asleep on the couch, completely drained. But we managed. We leaned on each other, becoming a tight-knit unit forged in the fires of abandonment. We had no other choice. Then, just as we were beginning to feel solid ground beneath our feet again, she reappeared. An email landed in my inbox, with Carter and Charlotte copied. She had important news and hoped they would be mature enough to listen. Against my better judgment, I opened it. She was engaged. She and Mr. Moneybags were getting married in the spring. The email was a masterpiece of self-absorption, filled with details of the lavish venue and her custom-designed ring, with a single, throwaway line at the end. I truly hope the children can be a part of my big day. It would mean the world to me. Carter read the email over my shoulder and let out a laugh, a harsh, brittle sound that was more a bark of pain than of humor. No chance, he scoffed. She could offer me a Ferrari, and I wouldn't go to that sham of a wedding. Charlotte didn't even bother to read it. Tell her I'm busy, she said quietly, her eyes never leaving the television. Tell her I have nothing to say to a woman who only remembers she has kids when she needs props for her perfect new life. Her desire to have them at her wedding seemed to flip a switch. A few weeks later, the offensive began. She started showing up at the house, unannounced, acting as if no time had passed at all. She came bearing gifts, a cavalcade of expensive peace offerings. Designer clothes for Charlotte, the latest gaming console for Carter, tickets to concerts and theme parks. It was a transparent, clumsy attempt to buy back their affection, to pave a golden road back into their lives. I want to rebuild our relationship, she'd say, her smile bright and forced. My life is so stable now, and I want to share it with you. Carter, now 15 and sharper than a razor's edge, saw right through it. During one of her visits, as she presented him with a top-of-the-line drone, he looked her dead in the eye and asked, "It's funny how your idea of rebuilding only started after you found a guy to pay for it all, isn't it?" The kids were impervious to her materialistic charm. They would offer clipped, one-word answers to her questions, their body language a fortress of crossed arms and averted gazes. The expensive gifts would be left untouched in their boxes, silent monuments to her failed campaign. Frustrated and unable to comprehend their resistance, she turned her anger on me. She cornered me in the kitchen after another failed visit, her voice a furious whisper so the kids wouldn't hear. "You've poisoned them against me," she hissed. "You've filled their heads with your bitter lies and turned them into your own personal soldiers." I looked at her, at this woman I once loved, and I felt a profound sense of pity. I didn't have to say a single word. I told her, my voice weary. "You did this all on your own. Your actions spoke far louder than any words I could ever say." By the time her spring wedding arrived, she had finally accepted defeat, at least temporarily. She stopped asking the kids to attend. Instead, she threw herself into the spectacle of the event, her social media feed becoming a curated gallery of her perfect life. The flower arrangements, the couture gown, the exotic honeymoon destination. It was a desperate broadcast to the world, a loud proclamation of her happiness that felt more like a cry for validation. Carter and Charlotte, to their credit, seemed entirely unfazed. They were engrossed in their own lives, their own friendships, their own budding futures. But I saw the cracks beneath the surface. I saw the way Carter's sarcasm was a shield for his hurt, the way Charlotte's quietness was a cloak for her loneliness. I was doing my best to be both mother and father, to be the constant in their chaotic world, but I knew, with a painful certainty, that I could never completely fill the void her absence had carved into their hearts. And then, after the wedding bells had faded, the campaign to buy their love began anew, this time with a new level of extravagance. A proposed all-expenses-paid family vacation to Europe. Brand new iPhones for both of them. Unlimited shopping sprees at the mall. She framed it as a genuine desire to make up for lost time, a way to share her newfound good fortune. But Carter, my brilliant, wounded son, cut through her performance with a single, devastating question. "Why now?" he asked, his voice steady. "Why did it take you 2 years to decide you missed us? Why did you only start caring again after you got everything you wanted? And how can you possibly think a trip to Paris can replace all the nights you weren't here when we actually needed you?" Charlotte, my gentle daughter, delivered her own quiet blow. She looked at the new phone her mother was offering and gently pushed it back across the table. "I can't trust you," she said softly. "I can't accept a gift from someone who can't even keep a promise." Watching them, so young yet so clear-eyed in their pain and their principles, I was filled with a fierce, overwhelming pride. But it was a pride tinged with a deep, profound sadness. They shouldn't have had to learn these lessons so young. They shouldn't have had to build such high walls around their hearts. This was her legacy, the reality she had created for them. And all I could do was stand beside them, a silent guardian, ready for the next time she tried to breach their defenses. The confrontation with her and her mother was the inevitable, ugly climax to a story that had been simmering for years. It happened on a Sunday morning, a day that was supposed to be quiet and lazy. I was nursing a cup of coffee and reading the paper when I saw her sleek, new SUV pull into my driveway. My stomach clenched. Unannounced visits were her new power move, a way to force an interaction we didn't want. But this time, she had brought reinforcements. Her mother emerged from the passenger side, her face set in a familiar expression of pinched disapproval. It was a declaration of war. I met them on the porch, a human barricade between their toxicity and the peace of my home. "This isn't a good time, Danielle," I said, my voice low and firm. She pushed past me, her mother trailing in her wake like a loyal, scowling foot soldier. "We need to sort this out," Danielle announced to the empty hallway. "The kids are being ridiculous, and it's time it stopped." In the living room, Carter and Charlotte froze. Carter immediately took off his headphones, his expression darkening. Charlotte's hand, which had been gracefully sketching in her notepad, stilled. They didn't say a word, their silence a more powerful rebuke than any shout. Their grandmother, never one for subtlety, launched the first attack. "I don't know what your father has been telling you," she began, her voice a sharp, accusatory whine, "but this disrespect towards your mother is appalling. You have no idea the sacrifices she has made." Carter, my son who had been bottling his rage for 2 long years, finally erupted. But it wasn't a shout. His voice was chillingly calm. "Sacrifices?" he asked, looking directly at his grandmother. "Did you teach her that cheating on Dad was a sacrifice? Was abandoning her family a lesson in respect you passed down?" The words hung in the air, sharp and glittering with truth. Danielle and her mother were stunned into silence. Carter wasn't finished. "You don't get to come in here and lecture us about family values," he continued, his voice rising slightly. "You enabled her. You watched her destroy our family, and you did nothing. So no, we don't respect her. And we certainly don't respect you." Danielle finally found her voice, sputtering that she had made mistakes, but that she was trying to make things right. Her mother jumped in, calling the children ungrateful brats. That was my breaking point. "That's enough," I said, my voice a low growl. "You will not speak to my children that way in my house." Charlotte, who had been silent until now, stood up, her sketchbook clutched to her chest like a shield. "You don't get it," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "We don't want your money. We don't want your fake apologies. We wanted a mom who stayed, a mom who didn't choose a rich guy over her own kids. You're not our mother anymore. You're just the woman who gave birth to us. You're a stranger." The word stranger hit Danielle like a physical blow. She staggered back, her face a mask of disbelief and wounded pride. She turned on me, her eyes flashing. "This is your fault. You've poisoned them." Carter stepped forward, placing himself between me and his mother. "He didn't have to," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "We have memories, you know. We remember everything. And we're done. We're done with you pretending to care. We're happy here with him. We don't need you." The finality in his voice was absolute. There was no room for negotiation, no opening for her usual manipulations. The battle was over, and she had lost. I looked at Danielle and her mother, two women so consumed by their own narratives that they couldn't see the devastation they had caused. "It's time for you to leave," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. I opened the front door and stood there, waiting. After a final, sputtering attempt to blame me for everything, they left. I closed the door behind them, the click of the lock a sound of profound finality. I turned to my children, my incredible, resilient children, who stood there, shaken but standing tall. They had fought their own battle and won. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that we were going to be okay. The three of us, we were a family, and we were unbreakable.